was drinking a lot of scotch and 6-pack of beer in a day, and I was taking the bifenamine to keep me sober because I couldn't cut the job. They throw requests at you, and you know, that means you have to translate from the mind to the fingers a tune you don't really know. You know? That's what they call piano bars, you know. Melancholy Baby. You might get to know that one, you know. At that time, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I was 10. My father said, there's an accordion, and my cousin teaches accordion, and you learn accordion, you'll put in 4 hours a day. It wasn't too overflowing with love. At times, and particularly I remember at school, it was just like you just lived day to day. There were some activities or little triumphs that you get, you know, you throw the baseball further and shit like that. And there were the chicks that you had the crushes on and cheerleaders, and I kind of was like a guy, a trance viewer, you know, watching it. I never cut a class in school. I didn't even finish. It was 44, and I took a job at a nightclub, strip joint. I went to Greenwich Village. I ended up playing with Max Kaminsky at a place called the Pied Piper. Then I sussed out that it was a matter of knowing the chords and the melody and playing in time.
Welcome to Jazz here on WKCR FM in New York at 89.9 on your dial. This is Phil Schaap with you. And on today's broadcast, I'm going to give you a little dose of jazz histories. We're going to bring one of the great legends of bebop here to our KCR studios, right on his arrival back in the States, the legendary Joe Albany.
I came from a very square background, suburb of Atlantic City, Ventnor, New Jersey, and if somebody robbed a store, it was headlines for weeks, you know, that type of thing. And I had no idea what drugs were when I got into it. The first drug I took was not with Berg, it was with a guy who's now dead. And he died that way with the spike in his arm and the blood coming down. They had to break down the bathroom door, and he's in Potter's Field. My father was a kid. He won a catechism contest. That's telling, you know, that the different rules of the faith, the Catholic religion and all, and the Hail Marys are said. And the prize was they took a bunch of kids to St. Peter's and locked them in overnight with all those statues in there. And it kind of frightened him, you know? But he used to go, when he went to school in Italy, he used to notice that the rich kids always got the preference. Best seats, this and that, from the teachers. So that turned him against religion. And I'd look for God in the church and I couldn't find him. And a lot of people say that jazz is the voice of the Spirit of God. That's the closest to it. Jazz is the ideal state for any repressed person to express themselves because they're improvising. I think it's man's nature that to indulge himself, this makes him the difference between him and God. It's imperfection. If he has access to creature comforts, pleasures, he'll take them if they come his way. There's an opportunity. That's part of it, isn't it? And the more sensuous the being, the more he's going to go for it. And a lot of artists are that we are that way, or have been that way. And everybody's a singer, aren't they? Somehow, everybody can do this, or tap dance, or whistle a tune. And all the world's the stage, I'm sure, and Shakespeare's lines, you know. And so the ones that get in it, maybe they're pressed in that area to show themselves. And sometimes they really feel they're not that much different. And could it be that they've taken drugs to be different? I would look for the charge I got, the flash. And of course, the flash gets harder and harder to get, so you have to keep shooting drugs, more drugs to get that flash. And pretty soon you got a big monkey on your back.
How'd you get with Benny Carter?
I used to go to a place called the Swing Club. This is before the famous recordings that Berg made and Diz made down there on Vine Street. It was up on Las Palmas, Billy Berg Swing, and the piano player, Hal Schaefer, was going with Harry James, and he was white too. And I was, so I took his chair, and Benny said, you know, I'm going on the road and make a tour. Riding in the bus is no new thing for a musician in the days in the big bands, particularly. We did a lot of that in engagements. Benny Carter's band, Georgie Hall, always as the arranger doing his music, he always seemed to be writing. The rest of the guys are goofing and talking about the next town the chicks are going to see and what kind of a dance floor it's going to be, and the people, do they dig jazz or don't they? A lot of things have happened to me on a bus. Some of them I don't care to speak about. But on the other hand, it was a way of getting, you know, making your bread in those days. You had to take those hops, those one-night hops overnight. Sometimes up to 500 miles, sometimes we make it. That means leaving after the gig and going right on. I was one of the first white people to play with an all-black band, Benny Carter's band. And I played with Joe Turner, and I was just a kid. Well, usually they would have set me in the black hotel as a black management, and it was a band. But riding the trains was a different thing. They wouldn't, I'd sit back with the blacks, and the conductor said I had to come forward when I would sit back there. So, and I protest that. But maybe they liked me. They figured he's not entirely shot full of prejudice, so there's some hope for him.
Joe Albany, however, is giving us the courtesy of trying to remember things that were long ago and far away. His jazz career, and of course, he's associated for his small group things with Charlie Parker and to a lesser extent Lester Young. But it was with big bands that perhaps all the major musicians of that time we heard of first, and Joe Albany played with the best of them. You know, you made your first record date with Georgie Hall's orchestra. That was back on May 24th, 1945. They're rare sides, too.
Yeah. Yeah, and he had Turk Van Lake arranging, and he had a lot of bassy charts that there weren't in other books, like Taps Miller, for example, which we used to cook on. And Georgie had the most cooking band. Well, one time we, the Georgie Hall's band, we finally reached a place called Toontown in St. Louis. And the manager, Pat, said, I'm sorry, fellas, if you made any draws, you better save it to buy tickets home because we're busted. And I had no money to give out and lots of luck. So a little trumpet player in our house, and myself, we knew a couple of chicks, and the chick that he knew cashed a war bond, so we arrived back in New York in style. And you're in something that this time immemorial began with the guys. I used to go from castle to castle and beg at the front door. We'll say, entertain you, give us a piece of meat from your table, and let us sleep in the servant quarters. We're on our way, you know. The people that took drugs were considered by the guards in the hospitals and the jails as just as intelligent, but like subnormal, subhumans. Like they would let us, we would have to hold the people that came in for shock treatment, you know, hold them down when they put those things on their head. and shit like that. They trust you. They talk to you and all like that. They wouldn't trust you. You're not, so you're locked up there. But they didn't regard you as crazy, just a dope fiend. But you really had a jacket on you. They used to give you the treatment they give alcoholics. They shoot a high velocity water on you and they give you hot chocolate to drink and stuff like that. Because they didn't know what to do in those days. We talked to psychiatrists. They said, oh, this is a schizophrenic, hebephrenic type, not paranoid, not harmful, but really crazy, you know, like a little wacko, whacked out. And I was with a bunch of people who had epilepsy. They put me in with those people, and they were always falling down. You have to catch them, you know. Or they'd rather take a sock at you, you know, and not remember. Blatant honesty, they charge you with all kinds of crap. And it's no fun in those places because you're always looking out. But the trouble with heroin, as I think back, and I have to think back because I haven't used it in a long time, and the whole thing is that heroin creates another world with people who aren't there because heroin isn't a person. You know what I mean? It's a chemical. It's a chemical thing that goes on in your body, but pretty soon you're just living for that heroin, and you lose what you don't realize you're losing it, but you're losing touch with the reality of life, other people, things like that.
The next stop was the interesting one, your association with Charlie Parker. And why don't you take it from your first meeting with Berg to your last meeting with Berg and all the steps in between? Tell us that story.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I cut myself into him, 52nd Street. I saw them coming across from a place where Billy used to sing, the Onyx Club. And I asked somebody, I said, who's that? He said, well, that's Charlie Barker. I said, oh, yeah, you know. And then I went into the club and listened and blew my mind, like I said. Yeah, I remember those days. So I started hanging out with him, like, you know, he'd be sick, or he needed a fix, and they'd send me out to get some orange juice, and I would go, you know. And he'd be writing music, he'd blow a couple notes, and everything he wrote just looked good on paper, just danced, you know. And I'd go out and get a reed for him. He used to get a 3.5 reed, Joe. And I'd go to Manning's or someplace, and I'd come back and he'd clip it down, he'd cut it down to make it stronger. He had great capacity of breath. And, he was a person that you got to know his greatness if you were around him. Then he hired me on a gig. It used to be the old famous door, became known as the Spotlight, working one night a week, a Monday. And the famous tap dancer, Baby Lawrence, used to come in there. He had a special disposition, and amongst the things, he was a very humble man to his God. And I can't think of no other to be humbler than that. To what, I mean, I know humility, and I can envy that much humility almost. I mean, I love that kind of a person that's that fucking good, you know? I think that Berg was like a herald from God, if you will. He was so far advanced that everybody else was sounding old hat, secondhand, all them cats, including Prez. I'm not going to make any friends with that statement, but I don't care, because I know this is the way that went down. Oh, we'd like to play one of Charlie Parker's first well-known numbers. It's a blues. It's called Billy's Bounce. And then we'll play a confirmation, one of Berg's best numbers, I think. course, we were using drugs in this period, too. That was another thing. That was a large part of that scene. And I'm not saying everybody took it, because they didn't. In fact, the ones that are alive today and well are the ones who didn't. I had a chance to go either stay in New York and take a chance that Charlie Parker would use me on a new recording, or to go down south. Well, I happened to go down south with my wife at the time, and I had been using heroin, but I was kicking on the bus to make the job. So I took 7 goofballs before I went on. I got on a bus, and I'm in the back, and she's trying to rub my back, and I'm saying, "Mother, F this and that." And some little old lady in the South goes up and complains to the bus driver, and he comes back and he says, "You have to watch your language," and I don't even know it because I'm half out. I say, "Okay." But then about 15 minutes later, a stop. The bus stops, the cop jumps on, comes back there, grabs me, handcuffs me, one hand under my leg and the other like this, and puts the cuffs on, and hops me up the aisle and throws me in jail for 4th of July. And the chick went too. I can remember getting paid in South Regal Theater, saying how many ounces of Red Cross, it was called, Red Cross's pot, and how much money you won. And that's what I did, hit New York, an ounce of it. And Berg and I smoked it up on one evening, like, I don't know, I was out of my head. Berg was taking a sweet potato and going down the avenue playing boop-blue-dee, ba-da-be-doo-da, ba-dee-ba-doo-doo-doo-doo. Just as light a spirit as he ever was. He was something else, Berg. One time, Berg and I were walking up in Harlem there, and we're looking for money to cops. And Billy Eckstein's band's in town. So Berg starts opening doors in the Braddock Hotel behind the Apollo Theater, or they call it Teresa Hotel. And he opens one door, and he's in bed with Gene Hammond, she can't tell us. And she pulls the covers up like that. Berg says, "Oh, I want to introduce you to Joe Albany." Joe Albany closes the door and walks away.
Back on the West Coast, Joe Albany renewed a friendship and made it a musical partnership with Charlie Parker. It was brief, but effective in that it has left a lasting mark on Mr. Albany, and of course, put him forevermore in the history of jazz. Playing underneath my voice and Joe Albany's is Joe Albany on piano with the famed Charlie Parker Quintet that played at the Finale Club in March of 1946 out in California. One of the historic bands, Chuck Thompson's drums, Addison Farmer's bass, Miles Davis on trumpet.
I don't know, it was a funny thing. It's a case of egos clashing, I do believe, because we're doing an air shot, and Berg is like standing over me, and I'm trying to, what they call play an accompaniment to the instruments, to him, and he was shaking his head. So I thought, oh, God, I'm doing something wrong, you know. So I did everything. Finally, I did what we call turn the beat around, play it backwards. And he went, no. So I said, fuck you, Bird. It just came off like that. And I don't know if it's on the air shot or not, but after it's over, Bird said, "You're fired, Joe," and he turned away and left his eyes staring at me. You could swing with Berg, but you had to swing. You couldn't swing with him. You had to swing after him, kind of thing. And I didn't feel that way. The more as I think about it.
This is the broadcast that you left Berg with. Did you ever work with Berg again?
Let me think. I don't think so. I remember I went out to Camarillo on the West Coast. This is when Berg had the breakdown. He was there already. And they caught me somehow, yeah. They caught me. I think I had escaped or something. But they caught me and they threw me back. They threw me in Camarillo, and I'm in what they call lock up where you first come in before you release them, what they call population. They do tests on you and physical checkups for tuberculosis and stuff like that. And I'm looking out the window at the bars, and I see a guy go, it looks like Berg, but he's now fat. He's got a red lumberjack, a red and black shirt on. So I yelled out, "Hey, Berg," you know. And he turned around, it was him, you know. So he went to the guard, the quarters there, and the guard brought me a couple dollars, some chocolates, secretes, cigarettes, all from Berg. And Berg said, you know, "I'll see you when you get in population." But I've been going with a chick, and I figured she was out there making it all around. And before I got to population, I took us to X-ray us for tuberculosis and all like that. And I'm standing with my clothes, naked with my clothes in my hands. I think this is crazy. I put my clothes off and I split and I run the barbed wire fence and I went over it, hit the highway, and back into L.A. In retrospect, and I've thought this more than once, that I should have stayed. I might have gotten tight with Berg, whereas before there was too many, he had to make his scene, and I wasn't ready for my scene in a way. And a year and a half later, I met him in New York around 53rd Street and Broadway, and we talked about it and we laughed, you know. And then next time I saw him, it was, 2 years before he died. It was on the West Coast. And that was the last time I saw him alive.
We left out another West Coast personality, Lester Young.
Lester Young. Oh, we shouldn't have done that. I didn't even know he was there. It was an after-hour jam session. And then somebody said, "There's Lester Young over there." And I was just getting into jazz, and they wanted to play Sweet Lorraine. And I said, "I don't know the bridge, the middle of it." And he said, "Well, go like this." So he showed me, he said, "Here's the changes in the middle." So then I, you know, got them in my head and then in the time sequence, and we played it.
Lester leaps in with Joe Albany, brief solo that shook up a lot of people because Prez working with a genuine bebop musician, August of 1946, with Chico Hamilton. A lot of people would still call him Forrest Hamilton around then. Red Callender's bass, Irving Ashby's guitar, Lester Young, leader, tenor saxophone, and Joe Albany on piano.
I stood raggedy in front of Birdland one day, and, you know, and trying to see somebody would come in who I knew, or see one loving face in all of fucking cold New York. And here comes Lester out of a cab, and he's mincing along, you know. And I say, "Hi, Prez." He goes right by me, right down in there. Well, maybe he was loaded so he didn't recognize me. Then I'm, you know, what did you put down on being loaded? Okay, so that's that, but... We both got on the same kind of wavelength at times, kind of driving at that point.
This is it.
could play with Prez. I could feel Prez. With Berg, it was in the mind, a lot of it. And he wouldn't tear down that barrier. He stayed there. His ego shot, whatever. Of course, at that time, dope was the thing, and you didn't get the benefit of the doubt. I don't think. There, you know, maybe you didn't. If you did, I don't see how. There are a lot of people who are dead too. I think a lot of the faults that hurt people like Lester Young was the society we live in. But if he was black or green or pink, I think he would have been the individual that he was. And yet, maybe he wouldn't have been formed out of the same fire. Billie Holiday. She was a great lady. And she was certainly a great singer. And when I look at music, when they go together, you've got a star like Billie Holiday.
My man don't love me. He treats me oh so mean. My man, he don't love me. He treats me awful mean. He's the lowest man that I've ever seen.
Whatever she did in her life, she didn't hurt nobody else. I have a great respect and admiration for Billie. I think she was a real original. She had a special way of phrasing that I liked, and that always stuck with me. I think all through my life, I liked that. Isn't that she had a great quality of voice? It's that she had a great concept of jazz.
He wears high-draped pants, stripes are really yellow. He wears high-draped pants, stripes are really yellow. But when he starts in to love me, he is so fine and mellow.
We never had a bad word between us. I thought she was lonely. And it's my fault for not reaching her, maybe, but in my own want. I'd like to think that if she were alive today, that I could communicate with her now, because I reached the maturity to know about what counts, you know. And the people are better not to want ever, and try not to be lonely.
Love is just like a faucet. It turns off and on. Love is like a faucet. It turns off and on. Sometimes when you think it's on, baby, it has turned off and gone.
They wronged themselves. Always it was that way. Short lives, an overdose, the end of a career, when they might have helped offsprings or family, you know, and would have was their intention, you know.
But the mid-40s is about the end of the story for Joe Albany, because with a few outcrops here and there, we didn't catch him again for a long time. There was a famed LP from the Riverside label in 1957, which he did with tenor saxophonist Warren Marsh, which received a critical acclaim that's still going on. I mean, the cat in the Daily News here in New York City just like raved about the album like it was like a new release 22 years later.
And then it became a real rat race, and I didn't dig it. And I ended up by doing between 5 and 7 years, and all told, in jails and nut houses. Not living in your hometown or stuff like that, and you have your only skill that you really possess is knowledge is music. And you're using dope. It's a pretty shabby existence because you're always in the gutter. You know, you're either you start to get around and you hang out with hookers, and pretty soon you're stealing things. That never did lay very well with me because I wasn't a good thief, I guess. It's 20-some years, 27 years or so that are gone. I mean, that I didn't really play at the piano. I went through some bad things in jail. I ended up in hospital, all kinds of things. Some I brought on myself, but I certainly didn't mean to bring them on the way they came down, you know. Your values are all channeled into the dope. So you have how can you be able to judge things, you know, when everything is geared to that? It's a terrible scene, all right?
And then the comeback, which I would have to describe in two ways, the European edition and the United States edition. Of course, over in Europe, Joe has built back his name with 7 years of very pungent and potent playing, making many important record albums and festival appearances. And here in the States, coming back very recently and about to embark on your first New York City engagement, I guess, since the heyday of the block.
I'd like to do a medley of standard numbers closely associated with jazz, and I do them justice. I mean, I was just looking for an escape out of it all, you know. It got pretty crazy for a while there. And while it was, you know, things looked very bad for me, and so I just took off. I got a passport and jumped out before they could file any bench warrants on me or anything. I went to Europe. gig in England at a topless bar in Mayfair. It was called the Bacchus Room. Like, you know, a businessman and 2 or 3 strippers grinding away, and the chicks walking around, you know, pinching their nipples when they couldn't see, so I'd come out, you know, like this, looking very spry for the customers. Started making a few festivals, big festivals, that is. Got a record contract with a French company. I met a lot of communist people there, and for what it's worth, they're the ones that helped me get work over there. Nice people, but definitely communists. When I fled from America, I said, you better do it right, you know. And the very fact that I didn't have the technique probably kept me alive to give me the opportunity to practice sometime, to get it together. And then I decided I had to come back here. I got myself to a certain state of proficiency, and I got good critical reviews. I wanted to get back into the mainstream, you know, jazz. I went before the court. The judge was talking about socking me away in Quentin, but he didn't. After giving him about a year, went in front of the judge again, and the parole officer gave me a good write-up, and they cut me loose.
I've outlined your career up to date, which is sort of like a 37-year panorama with a big gap in the middle of jazz. Big bands, bebop, the major names. And one thing that maybe we haven't impressed on the listeners, I think that you have to realize that Joe Albany obviously makes very strong impressions on musicians, because the best hired him consistently when you were working steady in jazz. Benny Carter, Georgie Auld, Lester Young, Charlie Parker.
Maybe they liked me.
No slouches. And then even just popping up in the 60s, Mingus. Bang. Let's call you the U.B. Blake of bebop. What happens for the next 40 years?
I like that. Phil Schaap phrase. The next, oh gosh. Well, like, one of my dearest friends told me, you've got 5 or 6 years of good jazz, so go out and make it, you know. Now I think only about doing as best I can, because I'm still not able to, you know, be in the state I like to be. So I do have a hope that I have enough mastery that I can, but then of course I ask an awful lot. people should realize that if they want to play an instrument, they best be involved with a lot of drudgery, too. Just try and keep a shining light in the future, like when you get it together, you know. The difficult thing is in anything is discipline. To get the strength of mind to go on when it's boring, you know. But when you're young, it's not that easy. And when you're older, you start worrying about it being too late. I put in 4 or 5 hours, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, working that instrument, learning the instrument, the technique as best I could. Not with a training, but I had the hand and book, and I would make up my own things if I saw fingers that were weak, that need development. And today I'm tired, but who knows? At least I got something going, you know. Before I expire, I might prosper and renown. Things are going well. I'm going to work next week at the cookery, Bonnie Joseph's cookery, and then I'm going to the hors d'oeuvre room at the top of the World Trade Center. I'll be working 7 nights a week between those 2 jobs all summer. I no longer know how to hope, but I know that I know about, but I hope things aren't hopeless.